Rolling out influencer campaigns across different African countries requires good planning and a nuanced understanding of culture. Tshego Kekana, the founder and MD of Alfa Destiny Communications, leads her team and clients through brand storytelling campaigns across Africa. They've helped brands like Absa, Kellogg's, and others to spread their message in South Africa, Eswatini, Nigeria, and other African countries.
I think what's important is understanding the market and being on the ground and spending time on the ground. Look, every market is different. What works in SA doesn't necessarily mean it will work in Ghana or Nigeria.
We talk about some influencer trends that brands should understand and how they can navigate these.
The whole bottom line is changing perceptions. So if the perception is negative, then how do we turn it around? And because we live in social media times, how do we then turn it around in a space of 12 hours?
You are listening to The Lead Creative. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome to The Lead Creative Podcast, where we talk to creative industry leaders, influencers, and brands. We discuss the strategies that influence brand thinking and shape industries. Thought leaders and heads of agencies let us in on some of their thinking and insights. I'm your host, Mongezi Mtati. Enjoy the show and please share and subscribe. Tshego, just to kick things off, can you tell me about the moment that you decided that you're going to work in the communications or creative industry? What was that turning point in your life?
The turning point in my life. So firstly, the journey for me started with me knowing that I want to be an entrepreneur at some point in my life. I was very young when I came to that realization. I was in high school. And when I realized that even if I do work for somebody, I don't want to work for somebody for too long. I want to run my own thing. And I started following entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs that I looked up to at the time. When I was in high school, I was very passionate about events. And I started organizing events from around when I was 15, 16 years old. So when I finished matric and I needed to study a course, the first thing that I wanted to study was events because I was so passionate about events. But I also knew that I'm a thinker. So I didn't want to just do, work with my hands all the time. I also wanted to have a thinking process, that goes, obviously I didn't know at the time what that meant, but somehow when I looked through the curriculum, the prospectus of, universities and varsity and certain colleges, then I found public relations. And when I read the prospectus of the details detailing the course PR, that resonated with me. And that is the reason why. So I wanted to do something that also, a course that had events in it. I studied PR, and later on, I was fortunate enough to get internship opportunities, and I started working in the PR space. The turning point then, what made me realize that I want to start my own business in comms, was seeing the gap where small businesses were concerned. I realized that there was a gap in small businesses, in successful small businesses. They were not getting the brand awareness and publicity that they deserved. And here I am working for a big corporate agency, doing PR for the likes of McDonald's and Sasol and all these big companies. And I thought, I'm gaining all these skills, but I'm servicing, I'm utilizing my skills to service bigger companies who do need PR, but not as much as the smaller ones. Right. And that was the gap for me. And that was the turning point for me, seeing that gap. And that was the reason why I formed Alfa Destiny in 2016.
Okay, since then, the journey has been a fascinating and really great one for Alfa Destiny, where you've worked with big brands, you've worked across the continent in many countries in Africa, and you've, of course, worked and you've seen trends come and go. You've seen different things come and go. What is the one trend that you're following at the moment, and why is that the one that's so interesting to you?
The one that I'm really doing a lot of research, and I'm speaking about it as well in platforms that I get an opportunity to speak on, is how brands are utilizing influencer marketing versus influencer PR, and the understanding between influencer marketing and influencer PR. Influencer marketing is when a brand wants to sell a product. So you put a face to the product, and the objective there is to sell. Whereby influencer PR is, the objective is to tell a story and build brand presence over time, or brand awareness over time, utilizing, partnering with a face. So it's interesting to see how some brands don't understand the distinguish between influencer marketing and influencer PR, and the return on investment between the two. Because when you invest in influencer PR, it's a long-term investment versus marketing. But the return, the ROI in the PR space, the influencer PR space, is that you get long-term investments where your customers are concerned. You get more loyalty from your customers because they resonate with one person instead of 10 people over time. So an example of that is, from a global perspective, is the partnership between Herbalife and Cristiano Ronaldo. That's a partnership that started with Herbalife looking for a face. That face grew into being a business partner. That business partnership also grew in Cristiano Ronaldo owning his own product line within Herbalife. And people resonate with him, and people resonate with Herbalife because of him. So there's a return on investment from a business perspective, from a brand perspective, from a customer perspective. Whereby, from a South African perspective, to bring it home, the example there is the partnership between Batu and Somizi particularly. Batu has worked with a lot of celebrities, but the partnership between them and Batu and Somizi is one that stands out. It's one that I would utilize as an influencer PR partnership. An example, because it has grown from where it started with Theo Baloyi pushing his sneakers to Somizi in when he was still at Metro FM, to Somizi having his own range, and now Theo helping Somizi build his own kiddies business. So that's an influencer PR perspective where all sides are benefiting from the partnership.
Are we playing musical chairs in the marketing space? And I'm asking this question based on, there were, in the early 2000s, from as long as marketing has existed, there have been brand evangelist or evangelist type of partnerships that brands had. It's just that the thing that didn't exist then that exists now is social media and digital, right? And the ability to amplify on those platforms. How is influencer marketing and influencer PR different from what we used to know as being, a brand partnership with a celebrity, which was back then known as, I think someone would be a brand evangelist or whatever the case is. Instead of appearing on social media, they would appear on a magazine as an example, right? So how have we elevated that in marketing, and how is it different today than it was in 1990, as for argument's sake?
Yeah, well, the elevation is the usage of social media. It has really elevated the market in terms of, conversations, in terms of the platforms, in terms of and the diversity and how you can utilize the platforms as best as you can. Look, social media has given us the opportunity to have billboard ads and pay a fraction of what you would pay for a normal billboard ad on the highway. So it's no different. The only difference is that we've moved from traditional to digital. But you still get the magazine ad on social or on digital platforms, because it's not just social media, it's beyond social media. There's digital platforms, there's podcasts, where brands utilize the ambassadors as voices it's something else that is starting. Actually, it has already started. It's something that a lot of brands are starting to use, but from a reputation management perspective,
Yes.
it never used to be like that. Brands, never trusted a Tshego who can speak on behalf of a brand, but now they do. Why they do that is because if I'm going to invest in Mongezi, and Mongezi is going to post about my brand on his platforms, the people that follow Mongezi are people who want to hear from Mongezi. It's not people that want to hear from my brand. They don't care about my brand, but they care about Mongezi. They care about, his lifestyle, what he drinks, where he parties, or whatever that Mongezi does. So people buy into you, and that's what brands are starting to see. So they would rather invest in you for as long as you align to their brand.
So you brought up very many interesting points in there that brands tend to worry about, and I kind of want to turn those around slightly. And the one point there is the reputation side of things, or the reputational aspects, because you are in communications and because you do a lot of media relations and public relations, you are at the coalface of good and bad media relations, or good and bad communication as it plays out. And if the bigger the name of the influencer, the more likely they are to have a reputational mishap or something along those lines. How do you manage that while ensuring that the person you've partnered with remains authentic to their voice and their audience?
That's a good question that I may not have an answer to. But look, we did work with Makazi, and trust me, the reputational management there was a lot, and simply because of who she is, and it was a thin line between having your message constructed correctly through her voice and allowing her to speak in her voice, in her way. And it's very tricky, to be honest with you, because now you are tapping into someone's personality, and now you're tapping into how this person speaks, and you're trying to remain authentic in all ways. A recent thing that we did, and I can make an example of, the stuff I'm talking about, they're already in the public space.
Yes.
We do work for JOSHCO, which is Johannesburg Social Housing Committee. And we recently acquired the services of an influencers, which Zanzi's greatest family. And because of, their content as a family and how they resonate to their followers, we then created content around them. But the thing is, the reputation management comes in understanding your influencers, understanding the content that they put out there, and ensuring that the content you want them to put out resonates with their audience, and it speaks to them and it speaks to their content. So gone are the times where brands dictate to ambassadors or influencers on what to say. Gone are the times when we put the content together and just, plug and play. No. We have to work together. And once it's out, once we've approved this content, I'm sure you've seen whenever there's a reputational crisis, people will say, who approved this? They'll always blame who approved this. Once we've approved the content.
There's been a lot of that.
Exactly. Once we've approved the content internally and it is published, we don't have control as to how the public will receive it. And that's the way the preparation comes in. So with this family, they put it out, the content out, and it's great content, by the way. And when people, and I read the comments, and when people started saying, they're like, oh, clearly this is an ad, because they're mentioning JOSHCO quite a lot, but it's fun, So the lessons then with us was that they're mentioning JOSHCO a lot. So how then you also want to, put your ad out there, but try to make it as authentic as possible. And trust me, sometimes it's not possible. But whenever the feedback can also be negative. And when the feedback is negative, then we prepare say a follow-up video, for example, or we become creative with it, I see a lot of celebrities doing statements. Statements are too long, boring. Become creative with your reputation management, and I think that's what we need to start doing. Then the family, if the feedback was negative, then the family was going to shoot another video to say, remember that Joshko thingy? We can make fun around the content, so that the whole bottom line is changing perceptions. So if the perception is negative, then how do we turn it around? And because we live in social media times, how do we then turn it around in a space of 12 hours or less?
There's something else in there, Tshego, that has also become very interesting within this influencer marketing, influencer PR space. And you've touched on it now. Like, the family that you refer to has become an influential family, or a family that as a unit influences a lot of people on social media. And as a result of that, they are not the kind of family that you're targeting with Joshko, people who are looking for affordable housing within the city center, as an example, right? So how do you marry these two, where the family, where the influencer or the family you're working with is seen to be at a higher place than the aspirational kind of person that you're targeting with your message, who wants affordable housing, where to the viewer, sometimes, how do you make that such that to the viewer it isn't disconnected or doesn't feel disconnected?
Because the family resonates with an average Black person who lives Kokasi, who does work, who clearly has access to social media. They resonate with that person. The family does not represent themselves as a luxurious, high-end, rich, wealthy family. They present themselves as, we're an average family that just loves each other, and we live in the township and we're happy, and most of Black folks, that's how we grew up. So we resonate with that. Their son now has finished matric, I think, and now is on his journey to start his new life in Johannesburg. And he's starting from scratch. He doesn't have a job. He's still going to hustle, so his parents can afford what they can afford. And that's where then the affordable housing comes in, because social housing actually, where the parents will be able to support him in, getting a rented apartment from Joshko. So the story then comes around that, and it makes sense, it resonates, because when you see the response from the audience, they liked it, because they also spoke about, oh no, my neighbor, Joyce, Lena, she applied for her son and blah, blah, blah. So it's like the community story as to, did you hear about this option, for your son or for your child in case they're going to Josie, so we made it look and feel very authentic and real, and I think that's the power of storytelling is, how you tell the story needs to resonate with your audience. So you always have the audience in mind first when you're telling the story. And that's how you marry the two brands. If it was let's say the Golisis, for an example, and we had a Joshko, it wouldn't make sense.
If you're enjoying The Lead Creative, please share this episode with your network and hit follow or subscribe. Enjoy the show. While sticking with storytelling a bit more and connecting that with influencers, you've done client work in South Africa, in Eswatini, as well as in Nigeria. And in some instances, of course, there's this cross-pollination between a brand that's in South Africa wanting to launch itself in the Nigeria market, or vice versa. How then do you tell the story in a nuanced way that if it's a South African brand, it appeals in the Nigerian market and you find influencers within that market who appeal there. Because we've seen countless stories where even big brands go into a new market like Nigeria, and there are quite a few retail brands who have sad stories of trying out in those markets with all the budget and falling flat. How did you find and create those nuances where you were able to get a South African brand to be sound and feel authentic in Nigeria, for instance? How do you do that? How do you make that work, especially with influencers in the mix as well there?
Yeah, I think what's important is understanding the market and being on the ground and spending time on the ground. Look, every market is different. What works in SA doesn't necessarily mean it will work in Ghana or Nigeria. I learned that personally while, traveling and working in other parts of the continent. And it's a matter of doing your research when you're on the ground and understanding what works. And I'll make an example. We launched Old Mutual Amazing Voices in 2019, and we did 4 countries and 8 cities in a period of 2 months. And each country and each city had its own challenge. And now you're bringing Old Mutual, which is to us as South Africans, Old Mutual is big. But when we went to Ghana, it's a small fish. It's a small fish. We had huge challenges in Ghana. Firstly, we knew that, okay, number one, we need to get this brand to the streets. So social media alone was not enough. We needed to do activations on the ground, print flyers, and go to cars and malls on the ground so that we get people to come and audition, because it was a singing competition. But people didn't even know who is Old Mutual. Whereby you go to Zimbabwe, it's a whole new ball game. It's big, but it's still a South African company. So why should we support a South African company? So the nuances are different in each market, and you need to understand the cultural intricacies that are within each and every market. And once you understand that, that's when you have an understanding, how do I then come in? How does my brand come in? How do we help this brand go in? And it's not a one size fits all. There's no formula. It's literally going in and understanding, spending time to understand the market. We've got a client right now called Health Guard International. Health Guard is a health and wellness direct business that utilizes direct marketing as their selling technique, similar to Herbalife, very similar to Herbalife. And now, as much as Health Guard provides individuals and people who are street vendors with an opportunity to run their own business and make income, when it comes to Ghana, for example, it was very slow. The start was really slow, to a point where my client took 2 months to just live in Ghana and understand, how does this market work? How do these people, where do they shop? What do they do? What do they shop? What music do they listen to? What radio station are they listening to? What TV station are they, you have to understand that. Once you do, and it's very important, once you understand that, that's when you can work around the strategy of how do I then launch in this country.
So understanding your audience is key. And also, I'm guessing, understanding the influencers that you can then work with. How do you then decide which influencers to work with in a market that you're not very familiar with? Because, of course, you can get these big name influencers, or you can get micro and nano influencers. How do you make that distinction? How do you make that call that for this brand, nano influencers would resonate, for that brand, celebrity influencers would resonate better? How do you make those calls, especially in markets that you aren't as familiar with?
Yeah, I think what works for me, and I'll because I can't talk about what works for everybody else. I've got consultants in different markets across the continent. When we are launching something, a product or a brand, or we want to do a press conference, or we want to do an influence engagement, whatever the case may be, I will put the strategy together from my perspective, and I send it to my consultant. So my consultant in Nigeria will then tell me this will work in this way in Nigeria. And if the strategy then includes us utilizing, like when we were in Nigeria last year this year now in 2023, this year for Health Guard, when I got there, I realized, oh my God, Health Guard Nigeria actually needs more youth voices, whereby Health Guard South Africa needs more male voices. So when we got there, myself and the Nigerian consultant, we then started the work of finding young people who are in lifestyle, fitness, health, who help, healthy lifestyle, fitness, all-round wellness. And these are the people that will resonate with the brand. So sometimes I come up with the strategy but I'm very open-minded to work together with our consultants to say, this is the plan, this is what we want to achieve. How can we achieve it for your market? And, my Nigerian consultant will tell me, your press release is crap, it's not going to work. This is how we can do it, and being open-minded about that. Look, I know a lot of South African companies, we do dictate.
Yeah.
We come up with the formulas and the strategies in South Africa. We send it to Nigeria to implement, and it shouldn't be that way. It should be, we should collaborate and work together, and that's the best way. Then you can find the right influencer for the brand, the right voice for the brand. And it can only happen when there's on the ground support.
That's a great insight. I think having on the ground support and collaborating well. However, brands want to control their message. Some brands are very strict about what goes out there and what is said. You've mentioned that you collaborate closely with influencers, you collaborate closely with the brands, which of course makes sense because, the successes that you've achieved speak for themselves. In some instances, you find that an influencer goes off script in spite of what you've given them. They go off script and they don't stick clearly to the message, especially in things like financial services that you've mentioned, where the messaging is very strict and the regulations are very strict as well. In health and wellness, once again, there are things you can say and there are things you can't say. There are claims you can make and claims you can't make. Yeah. As a layman, I don't always know what those claims are and what those claims also shouldn't be. How do you manage those kinds of things without overly scripting who you work with?
Yeah. So you don't script, you guide. And you still control the content. So what we do is we provide messaging guidelines where we will tell the influencer, this is what we want to see in your message. So these are the types of words that we want we want you to actually incorporate in your message. Scripting the entire thing for the influencer, for their platforms, is never advisable, because it's what I said earlier, that you are speaking in somebody else's voice. It's this person that needs to speak in their own voice. They need to write in their own way. That's the only way you will get the audience attention. But once the audience sees that, this is scripted, and people have started noticing that, oh God, okay, you've gone off script. This is not you. Somebody has written this for you. Then they tap out, and you don't want people to tap out. So we don't script the message. We guide it in terms of, we give you guidelines of what to mention, what not to mention. It's very important to work together with the influencer in terms of the content. They create the content, send to us. We look at it. Is it fine? Is it not fine? And we are looking with the eye of the reputation, managing the reputation of the organization. Not in the eye of, we wanted to tell you what to say. No, it's just a matter of what you are doing. Does it resonate, and does it resonate with the message that we want to send out there? Will it tarnish our brand in any way? Will it risk the brand in any way? Those are the things the factors that we look for. And then we control it. The control there comes in us reviewing and approving. Cool, the content is fine, you can post.
So there are guidelines and almost checks and balances at every step of the journey to minimize these kinds of mishaps or instances when people go off script and things are off message, if you will.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
I get that. Yeah. And how do you measure ROI in some of these instances, especially in instances where it's not a, buy this or buy that? How do you measure the success of your campaigns? Because sometimes, of course, some brands want certain hard numbers, be it sales or whatever it is. How do you measure the success for some of these brands, especially you've mentioned Old Mutual and you've mentioned health brands? How do you measure the success between how powerful the message was versus the benefit to the client?
The biggest, there's different ways to manage, to measure. The biggest one is engagement. It's pointless that you had 10,000 views but no comments. Then, okay, they viewed it, but we want to know how did they feel about it? What is their opinion about it? And that is the biggest measurement, the engagement. Also remember, there are people who buy robots as followers. So then you get the like, but you don't get the comments or you don't get the shares. When a person shares your post, it means they really liked it enough to share it on their own platform. When people comment, it means it interested them that they took those 2 seconds to comment. So the biggest form of measurement on social media is the engagement. The biggest form of measurement on digital media is the click-ons. When my content is good enough for a person to click on it, to read more or shop now or whatever the call to action is, then I measure how many click-ons did I get. Because the clicks, it means you were interested enough, you wanted more information. And I don't know if there's a tool that does this. I haven't investigated as yet. But if there's a tool that actually can extract contact information of the people that click to your information, then you've got your customers. Then that means the reach has been measured. The investment is there. That 1 or 2 people that have clicked, you actually automatically receive their contact. Maybe that's a business somebody must think of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that makes sense. No, that makes perfect sense. And what have you found to be, I think, some of the challenges with brands? Because sometimes, and this comes up time and time again when we talk to I think heads of agencies as well as influencers themselves, the element of trust, because sometimes you have to trust the process as a brand, right? What are you finding, or at least what would your parting shot be in terms of what brands should do or how they should cultivate that trust with their agency partners? Because you've worked in various markets, you've seen a lot of kinds of influencer marketing and influencer PR relationships come and go. But brands, because they want to say what they want to say, sometimes don't trust the process enough. How do you cultivate that trust? How do you build it?
I think, it comes in, us showcasing the work and ensuring that whatever that we pitch to you is good enough for you to trust us. Once the work is in and the work is done, once you invest in it, I believe that's where the trust needs to come in. And what I've seen with some brands is, especially when working with influencers, is that, I'm trying to trust this person, but I'm not sure what if it fails, or what if they write about me on social media, or what if. And the fear has to be taken away. And the trust it's like buying something and hoping that it will work, whatever thing that you bought. You can't put money into it and not trust that the process will work. So from our perspective then is our job is to ensure that, number one, we lure you in our pitch and show you exactly how we're going to make it work step by step, so that you understand the process entirely. But also understand if ever we may face potential pitfalls, we need to showcase those risks, so that when the brand is investing, they understand that I'm also investing in certain risks, potential risks. And when there is a risk, this is how we can either mitigate the risk or manage it. So it's very important to be transparent and honest from the onset and give what they call a customer journey of how this thing is how the process is going to flow. And once you invest, and then you have to just trust the process. There's no other way.
If you're enjoying The Lead Creative, please share this episode with your network and hit follow or subscribe. Enjoy the show. There have been many changes over the past couple of years on social networks, with TikTok coming into play and Instagram in some ways changing their strategy to look more like TikTok, Facebook as well. We are seeing YouTube Shorts now that are also on the rise. What are your thoughts on what social networks will win that brands should focus on, and also how these social networks influence the partnerships and collaborations between brands and who they work with?
I firstly believe that brands should be investing more in social media marketing, which is what your TikToks are offering, and Twitter is offering it now with Twitter Spaces. There's a whole conversation platform that Twitter has created that brands are tapping into, where you can also advertise the conversation before the time. I think brands need to invest more in that. That is where that is the marketing, that digital marketing is growing fast every single day. People no longer look at billboards. People no longer care about billboards. People are too busy and people are on their phones all the time. So being on your phone, that's where you have a captive audience on mobile. So social media then has your Meta. They've seen the rise of brands investing in social media, and the rise of the demand of people utilizing social media, and demand of data. So this is a place where I believe every single brand should be tapping into. I do understand that there are brands who are fearful of social media as to, the negative side of social media. The thing about digital is that there will be a negative side to it, there will be a positive side to it. You just need to take the risk and figure it out. TikTok is offering a great platform for brands to play. It's a playground, actually, because people are going on TikTok because they're bored, because they want to get out of whatever boredom they're in. They want something interesting, something fun, and they know they'll get it on TikTok. And immediately when you open your TikTok, there's already an ad. That's a captive audience. A brand that invests in that, they're gone. So look, it's an exercise we're also trying to teach some of our other brands. I know Absa took some time for them to invest into TikTok, but conversations that we start having. Also on the conversations part, there are now more platforms where brands can have conversations and thought leaderships and give their opinions on issues, that are taking place in the society or the economy, and that's where I was going with Twitter Spaces. You can have a branded Twitter space, a sponsored Twitter Spaces, where you can communicate or provide a platform where people can communicate. So honestly, social media investment, marketing investment is key for now and in the near future. And I'm sure there will be something way faster and better that your Mark Zuckerbergs and them are creating.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Tshego. I think that's a really great point to close on. And I think what I got out of that is, trust the process, trust the process, trust your partners, let influencers be authentic in their voice, provide guidance as much as possible, and invest in some, I guess, test and experimentation as you go.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you for listening to The Lead Creative. Did you get one insight that's worth sharing from this episode? Please share it with your network or your friends. Pop me some of your ideas and innovative finds on Twitter on @Mongezi. This podcast is available on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, Google, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also find me on mongezi.com.